In a previous video, I described how to get office-quality internet in your RV, trailer, camper, or van. And one of the main components of that setup was this cellular Wi-Fi antenna. Now, when it comes to installing something like this on a small camper trailer, like this one here, you have very little room to work with, so you've got to be creative in where and how you install this. The antenna needs to stick up above everything else on the roof of your vehicle, but it can't stick up so much that it throws shade on your solar panels. And when it comes to backing into at least my garage, this thing can't stick up at all. But no worries, the boating world has given us a solution that works great. It allows us to move this up into position when we want it and down and out of the way otherwise. Now, this kind of installation is unique for each specific situation out there, but I think you'll find there are unique parts and unique ideas in my installation here that I hope will give you ideas for your specific situation. I'm Scruffy Golden. Let me show you how we did this.
The trick with this setup is finding the right parts and making them come together the right way. For my installation, I'm going to attach the cellular antenna to a pole bracket, which is attached to a metal pipe that threads onto a marine mount. The marine mount is bolted to a piece of PVC pipe that is itself bolted to the roof rack of my hiker trailer with a special 90-degree clamp. Now, some of these parts are specialized, so I'll put a link to all of them in the description below. Tools are specific to your setup, but in addition to the basics, like a measuring tape and wrenches, you will need to find a way to cut PVC and metal pipe to size if you aren't able to order them to size or have them cut at your local big box retailer. Now, the first thing we need to do is strap the 1-inch PVC pipe to the roof rack bar. For that, I used a 90-degree pipe clamp that allows us to attach 2 bars or pipes perpendicularly. This clamp was not easy to find and not at my local big box, so check the description for a link to it if it's something you want to use. Also, if anyone knows where I can find one of these for a 2-inch pole, please let me know in the description below. You will probably need to cut the PVC to size. To do this, dry fit the marine mount onto the PVC and use a pencil to mark the cut. As you can see here, I used the bottom of the pipe thread on the marine mount as the cutting point on the PVC. PVC is easily cut with almost any saw. Here, I just used my miter saw to cut the PVC to size. From there, the PVC is easily strapped to the roof rack bar with the 90-degree pipe bracket and a wrench. Now, there may be quite a bit of tuning later on, so only tighten things enough to hold them in place for now. The star of this show is a marine mount that is used to attach VHF antenna to boats. Now, this version allows antenna to be attached to a bar or rail, but there is also a version of this mount that can be screwed down to a flat surface. This little guy is dense, heavy duty, and a brilliant design. With a quarter turn of the handle, you can swing the stem of this mount a full 360 degrees, assuming you have the clearance. When the antenna is where you want it, a quarter turn back tightens down the entire assembly. Now, the mount is bolted to the PVC pipe as you see here. A hex wrench was needed to tighten it down. Before moving on, make sure you have the necessary clearance for turning the handle. The marine mount accepts a 14-thread metal pipe that will probably need to be ordered online and then cut to size. Dry fit the metal pipe and use the antenna's pipe bracket to determine the appropriate length of the metal pipe. To determine the length, place a mark 1 inch above the highest bolt on the pipe bracket. Now, there are a few ways to cut a pipe like this, and a hacksaw is probably the most common way to do it. However, after clamping down the pipe and putting on some safety glasses, I used an angle grinder with a cutting wheel to do the job this time. Once complete, screw the metal pipe onto the marine mount. The antenna's pole bracket can be attached in a number of ways depending on what parts you have used, so use whichever configuration is best for you. It took a few attempts before I got things right. Originally, I started with the square clamp against the pipe because it had these staggered jaws that looked like they would hold best against the metal pipe. However, this interfered with the handle on the marine mount so much that I figured I'd remove the square clamps altogether. But this created a new problem where the threads on the bolt weren't long enough for a pipe of this size. Ultimately, moving the square clamps to the back side of the pole bracket provided for the magic combination in this case. It also took a few attempts to tune everything the way I wanted it. For instance, the pole mount needed more clearance above the PVC pipe than I had originally estimated. Be prepared to loosen and tighten everything a few times until you get everything lined up just the way you want it. With the pole bracket attached to the pole, it's time to attach the antenna to the pole bracket. Start by cleaning the top of the pole bracket and threading the 7 antenna cables through the hole in the top. Pull the protective backing off the bottom of the antenna to expose the sticky rubber gasket and press the antenna firmly onto the pole bracket. It is not your imagination if it looks like the antenna's sticky underbottom hangs out over the pole bracket. I found this so weird that I checked the installation instructions multiple times to convince myself this is what was intended. And just a heads up, that overhanging part will stick to everything it touches, including your trailer when you put the antenna down. It's a little gross to think it will be sticky until enough dirt has rendered it unsticky, right? Still seems wrong to me. Anyway, from there, bolt the antenna to the pole bracket. In the video, you can see I have a flat washer and a bolt, but there should also be a big lock washer that goes between the two. I'm in the process of moving, so I probably misplaced the lock washer somewhere, and I'll definitely have to get a new one. If the flat washer is any indication, I may have to call Parsec directly in order to get a lock washer this big. Regardless, be sure to use that lock washer in your installation, or this whole thing could loosen over time. Use a pair of large jaw pliers to tighten the bolt until the lock washer is flat. Be sure not to over-tighten. Again, your situation will probably vary, but you can see there's no way I'm pulling into my garage with the antenna in the upright position. Even with every effort to get this installation profile as low as possible, it is still a very tight fit into my garage. In fact, the original placement of the antenna was too tight, as you can see here, so I had to move everything over on the roof rack bar. Ouch. I also had to rotate the handle on the marine mount so that it didn't stick straight up. Fortunately, that is possible. Otherwise, this would have been a depressing failure on the 1 yard line. Even with everything as tight and perfectly placed as possible, there is still only a ½ inch at best to spare. It did finally come together though. Phew. In case you're wondering, the tetrapod you see screwed down to the 2x4s is the base to my Starlink satellite dish. I'm experimenting with a few different possibilities for mounting that dish onto this little trailer, and I'll bring those findings to you in a future video. Until then, live without compromise, and I'll see you out there.